We're not against jobs. We're not against development. We're against doing it at the cost of the environment and the health of the populace. This is what Cuomo is dragging his heels on. His political future, as far as I'm concerned, is at stake. If he votes and allows hydrofracking, one single well is a defeat in this state.
That's right. You got it.
If he lets the people in the poorest counties in the southern tier like that. I'm from Cooperstown. We have the wherewithal to have municipal help. We've banned hydrofracking. The governor of Vermont is banned hydrofracking. What part of this doesn't Cuomo get?
Thanks everyone for coming out. My name is Rene Vogelsang. I'm a regional coordinator and a statewide organizer with a nonprofit organization, Frack Action, and also a regional coordinator with a statewide coalition called New Yorkers Against Fracking. New Yorkers Against Fracking is a statewide coalition of over 120 organizations and now close to 1,000 independent businesses calling for a statewide ban on hydrofracking in New York State. And so we're here today on the heels of a message on a possible proposed plan from the governor and the New York State DEC to frack in certain counties in the southern tier. DEC Region 7, where we're standing today, represents many of those counties in the southern tier, and we're here to say that there will be no division of New York State, of dividing us into fracking and non-fracking zones. No New Yorker deserves to be a guinea pig to this dangerous practice. We've seen the evidence, we've seen the science, we've seen the facts that fracking cannot be done safely. And the only adequate protection, the only adequate regulation for New York State is a statewide ban on hydrofracking. So we're sending our message loud and clear to Governor Cuomo and to the New York State DEC that New York does not want fracking. Our coalition is growing to hundreds of organizations and thousands of independent businesses across New York State, and we have a few speakers here today to not only represent those organizations, businesses, and residents who do not want fracking in New York State, but also we have elected officials across New York State who have been speaking out and have been working with the people in their communities to stand up and to protect themselves against this dangerous practice. So first up, we have Councilors at Large Kathleen Joy and Jean Kessner.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. We appreciate it. And welcome to the city of Syracuse. The city was one of the first cities in New York State to ban hydrofracking. We would encourage all municipalities to do the same. And you know, it's interesting, in the city of Syracuse, our watershed is protected around Skaneateles Lake. New York City's watershed is also protected. I can't understand why the state would allow a double standard. Why is our drinking water and why is our health of our citizens worthy of being protected, but folks down in the southern tier and their watersheds are not? I can't understand it. We have to call on the state, on the governor and our elected officials to have a uniform policy across the state. Protect all of us, protect our watershed, protect our natural resources. That's the message that we need to send today. And I thank you again for all coming out and being in the city of Syracuse. Jean, thank you very much. It's important as we stand in Syracuse, knowing, as Kathleen said, that our watershed and that our city are protected from hydrofracking. But what if they allowed it in Solvay or in DeWitt? It's the equivalent to what they're doing in Steuben and other southern tier counties, because right next to that county is another one where no government has said it is okay. And I know that Joe Heath is here, and it's a comment of his, and it's correct. How much of the legislation that was passed that was pro-fracking was really an indication of how the people have felt. People in Syracuse that we hear from don't want hydrofracking, and nobody else should have to live with it who doesn't want it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joe Heath. He's a legal counsel with the Onondaga Nation.
To me, what Cuomo said yesterday is we should all take very careful attention to this, because what it means is that he's going to unleash fracking in our state within a few months. He's clearly telling us this. And we have to redouble our organizing efforts. So that's the bad news. The good news is that as our anti-fracking movement has grown, Cuomo keeps backing up. He keeps limiting the areas that he's going to threaten with this. And so we have to keep organizing. We have to double down, because it's only the people that are going to stop fracking. We can't allow this divide and conquer tactic of the Cuomo family that we've seen for decades in New York. We can't allow that. We know that. There are no real answers yet. Air pollution. There's a blanket of smog that comes out of all of these wells. Thousands of trucks are going to ruin the roads in these southern tier counties. The sand that's being mined to frack with is ruining communities in the Midwest. There's still no place to treat the massive quantities of frack fluids that will come out of these wells that are radioactive with hundreds of toxic chemicals in them. This state isn't even going to spend the money on a health impact study because they're afraid of what it would show. New York brags that it has the best regulations in the country. That is not at all true. We have the least protective setbacks from houses and wells of any state in the country. And we all know that local governments are going to be burdened with unsupported costs for this, the fire departments, the health departments. Fracking is not safe. It is not green. We know it's worse for climate change because of the methane leakage. We know it's not about energy independence. It's about corporate profits. Chesapeake is selling their leases to Chinese and European companies so that they can increase their corporate profits. It's not about energy independence. It's about Cuomo's presidential ambitions. We have to teach him that this will hurt his political ambitions. Because that's the only rule for him. And what we really ought to be doing, as we all know, is looking for real solutions to the energy problem. Creating green jobs that will last.
Yeah.
We cannot allow Cuomo to do this to the southern tier, and thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Joe. Next up, we have someone who's been working on the local level and worked very hard on a recent ban in the town of Skaneateles, New York, who is also a nurse and works with Shaleshock CNY, Mary Menapace.
Thanks, Renee. I just have a message for Governor Cuomo. Yesterday in the New York Times, part of the article said that he will be cognizant of towns that don't want drilling. And I want him to know that this is not a feudal state. The large landowner and the gas leaseholder do not get to be king. It is public opinion that rules in a democracy. And everywhere that public opinion has been quantified by a poll, a survey, or a petition, I am not aware of one town or community in New York State that wants to be drilled. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary. So up next, we have internationally acclaimed author and biologist, as well as co-founder of the New Yorkers Against Fracking Coalition. She actually gave her $100,000 Heinz Foundation Award dedicated to stopping fracking in New York State. I would like to announce Sandra Steingrabber.
Well, hello, Syracuse. Woo! So here we are on this most beautiful of June days. The weather looks like the kind of day that you might want to have for your wedding or for a birthday. And yet we're not in a celebratory mood today. Our hearts are broken. Having read the headline news yesterday about the so-called Cuomo plan to drop a shale gas curtain in the middle of our state, putting some of our beloved residents of New York on the far side of that curtain, people who will not be offered the same kind of protection, the same kind of clean air and water that the rest of us will enjoy. And so for me, the last 24 hours have been filled with tears. They began when I woke up yesterday morning with a friend who called, and she was crying so loudly. I couldn't even understand what she was saying. I hadn't read the New York Times yet. And it continued last night with my 10-year-old son sobbing on the porch. You might remember my son Elijah. He's got asthma. He's been writing letters to Governor Cuomo for 2 years. He's been speaking out at every rally I let him come to, and he said, "Mama, we're failing. He's not listening to us." And he cried for an hour on my front porch. Governor Cuomo, anybody who makes my son cry has a problem with me. This morning I got my neighbor showed up on my doorstep, and she was sobbing, wanting to know, what do we do now? What are you going to do, Sandra? How are we going to fight this now? And so forth. So it's been a 24 hours filled with tears for me and my household. And I've come with those tears, but I've also come with some questions, and I wonder if you can help me answer. The first one is this. You remember learning in the 5th grade about the Mason-Dixon line that once ran across our nation? On the north side of that line, you got to get married and buy a house and enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if your skin was brown and you lived on the far side of that line, you were somebody else's property, and your children could be sold out from under you. Did that partition bring peace, prosperity, and well-being to our land? No. Did you remember learning about the Missouri Compromise? We couldn't decide about slavery, and so when 2 states came into our nation to receive statehood, a compromise was struck so that Missouri came in as a slave state and Maine came in as a free state to keep everything balanced. And the decision, the great moral question of our time about slavery, was left in the hands of locals. And how about that decision? Did that really work out for peace, prosperity, and well-being for our nation? No. And what about the Berlin Wall? And what about the Iron Curtain? What about the line between North and South Korea? Is that working out? Is that bringing peace, prosperity, and well-being to people around the world? No. In fact, can you name any partition that's dropped down from on high by a politician that divide people into 2 camps, on one side offering a guarantee of protection for basic human rights, and on the other side menace and danger and treated like a second-class citizen? Does that ever work out? No. So if that's the case, then this is our message to Governor Cuomo. It's the same one that President Reagan said when he went to the Berlin Wall, when he said, "Tear down this wall, Governor Cuomo, tear down this wall in your imagination, because it will not stand." We vow in this group here to actively oppose any wall, any shale gas curtain dividing one part of New York from another. There are no children and no places in New York that we are willing to sacrifice to so-called demonstration projects. There is nothing here that needs to be demonstrated unless it's safety, and the burden of that demonstration belongs firmly on the industry. And the Southern Tier is not a laboratory for that experiment. I want to close with a piece of poetry that someone left in my mailbox this morning. Somebody else who said they'd been crying for the last 24 hours left me this note, and it has a quote by the poet Pablo Neruda. "Let us think of the entire earth and pound the table with love." That's what we're doing here today. We're thinking of the earth, and we're pounding the table with love. Let us think of the earth and pound the table with love. More to come in the days to follow. We have a big fight in front of us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Up next, we have another member of the New Yorkers Against Fracking Coalition, the New York State Breast Cancer Network. We have the executive director. We're so lucky to have the executive director of the New York State Breast Cancer Network, Andi Gladstone.
Thank you, Renee. I am the executive director of the New York State Breast Cancer Network, and we are a network of 20 community-based, cancer survivor-driven, freestanding organizations that are located in communities all across New York. Each year we reach 100,000 people, New Yorkers, affected by breast cancer. We came together as a network because of our shared cancer experience. Unleashing carcinogens in the southern tier will affect everyone in the state of New York, and the cancer community knows this only too well. I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 44. I was shocked by my diagnosis. No family history, vegetarian, jogger, non-smoker, but I did have some suspicious exposures to carcinogens or environmental toxins early in my life. Those were environmental toxins that policymakers at that time assumed were safe before they actually knew. Here's our question. Where is the health impact study for hydrofracking in New York? The New York State Breast Cancer Network believes that fracking will bring our cancer experiences to many, many more New Yorkers. Our policymakers need to consider the consequences. Where is that health impact study for hydrofracking? For over a decade, the New York State Breast Cancer Network has worked to reduce the public's exposure to environmental toxins that contribute to cancer. If fracking moves forward, our collective efforts over the past 10 years will be washed away as more New Yorkers will be exposed to the very same harmful chemicals that we fought so hard to reduce or eliminate. We call on our policymakers to tell us, the cancer community, how many lives they think are worth a short-term supply of natural gas, of which we already have a surplus. We need a surplus of healthy, productive people in New York, not a surplus of polluting fossil fuels. And where is that health impact study for hydrofracking? Thank you.
Thank you, Andi. Up next, we have somebody who actually comes from the heart of fracking, one of the hearts of fracking in the United States, from Brackney, Pennsylvania, and now lives in Lafayette, New York. We have Bill Fischer.
As a young man, my wife and I began to raise a family in Vestal, New York, in the southern tier, only to be notified 5 years later by the township that my children had been drinking contaminated water from well 4-2 because of contamination by Monarch Chemical. We moved the family to Endicott only to find out that IBM had contaminated the aquifer with trichloroethylene. Later, we would move to our retirement home at Silver Lake in Brackney, Pennsylvania. Only as the gas industry landed in the middle of that county and began to destroy it. The southern tier in the last 10 years has suffered 2 500-year floods. The last thing they need is to have the air saturated with methane, and for the rains to bring down on it nitrous oxide, acids, and volatile organic chemicals onto the people and into the watershed. I don't know whether the governor is aware of it or not, but the Director of Mineral Resources for New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Bradley J. Field, the man who would potentially release these permits, has signed a petition stating that he does not believe that global warming is accelerated by man's activities. This is the level of competence which is driving the S-guys. Governor Cuomo, you have done some good things for New York. And this state needs good men. And the nation needs good leaders. But if this opening gambit is your trial balloon for future political aspirations, this balloon is filled with methane gas and it will blow up in your face. Governor Cuomo, you are a very smart man. But getting into the same boat with Senator Libous, a boat which is apparently leaking and liable to sink, is not a wise political move. Government's first priority is to protect its citizens, not to promote the interests of a gas lobby. And your duty is to protect all of the citizens, not to offer up the financially disadvantaged as lab rats to an uncontrolled field experiment by exposing the civilian populations of the southern tier to toxic gas emissions and contaminated flowbacks for 20 years. Governor Cuomo, you have two choices. You can choose to put this agenda forward, or you can choose not to. As your father would tell you, a wise politician will take the reversible option. And if you take the option to frack the southern tier, that is not reversible. Governor Cuomo, what this state needs is your leadership to take us beyond using hydrocarbons and to develop a sustainable future using alternative energies. This state needs you to show the political courage to take the State University of New York educational system and make New York a mecca of emerging technologies for sustainable employment opportunities for the future. Governor Cuomo, we need you to show that courage, and that time is now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. Up next, we have someone who's also been working tirelessly in the statewide movement to ban fracking. He's the co-founder of the Finger Lakes Clean Waters Initiative. You may know him from the Big Splash concert series. So thanks to Chris, we have that, and also the big concert with Natalie Merchant in Albany. So without further ado, Chris Tate.
Thank you, Renee. My message to the governor is very simple. You break it, you own it. This is New York State. This isn't Texas, it's not Pennsylvania. We have some of the purest waters left on the planet here in the state, and we want to keep it that way. And the only way we can do that, is to enact a statewide ban on hydraulic fracturing. This form of hydraulic fracturing is perhaps the most poisonous, the most detrimental technology ever implemented in the borders of the United States to extract fossil fuels. There is no turning back once an aquifer is poisoned. There is no safe way to frack. That's right. We believe that soundly, and we're going to continue to present our own form of education. We seek to harness the power of music, the substantial power of music, in order to educate and create awareness events around the subject of hydraulic fracturing in New York State. And we're very, very happy to be able to partner with New Yorkers Against Fracking and the other groups in the Southern Tier. And I just want to say to the people in the Southern Tier, we stand with you. I mean, we may be from the Finger Lakes, we may be from other parts of New York, but our reach is statewide. And there are people statewide that are with you, and they will stand with you. And I will stand with you on the border. I will hold your hand, and we will stop this from coming to New York State. And the governor needs to understand that. He will never be elected again if he brings fracking to New York State. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So we have a couple more speakers before we go, or before we stay and make our voices heard a little bit longer with our signs and with our chanting. But up next we have Howie Hawkins, who many of us know with the Green Party, one of the first entities to call for a statewide ban on fracking in New York State. So without further ado, Howie.
Well, as many of you know, I ran against Andrew Cuomo as the Green Party candidate for governor 2 years ago. And one of my key issues was we need a ban on fracking in New York. So, first thing I want to say is don't blame me. I voted for Howie Hawkins. So did I. You laugh, but how many of you voted for Cuomo as the lesser evil to the crazy man Palladino? Because what you voted for was a little more regulation of fracking instead of a little less. Because from the top of the Democratic Party with Obama and Secretary Chu down to the state level and many of our local elected officials, not all of them, but most of them, it's drill, baby, drill. All of the above energy policy. And I want to say about the divide and conquer tactic that we all live in the frack zone. That's right. We all live in the frack zone because one of the major consequences of drilling and fracking the Marcellus Shale is to blow a big hole in the carbon budget. We can only put 500 more gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere globally before we blow past the 2 degrees Celsius threshold, the tipping point beyond which global warming becomes runaway. And if you look at the amount of carbon just in the Marcellus Shale, forget the coal, forget the oil, forget all the other hydrocarbons, just in the Marcellus Shale, if we drill that, we will blow the U.S. past its portion of the global carbon budget. So we can't drill or we're going to have runaway global warming. And if you don't think that affects you, just consider the report that came out this week that in the Gulf of Maine, the phytoplankton is down 40% from 1950 because of a lot of fresh water coming off the glaciers and especially the increased rainfall in the Northeast. But also because the carbon creates carbonic acid and turning our oceans into what we saw in Adirondacks with acid lakes that are sterile. The phytoplankton dies, the food chain of the ocean dies, and the ecosystem collapses. And I won't go into all the other terrestrial consequences of global warming. So we all live in the frack zone because they frack downstate, we're going to be impacted. So everybody here needs to realize that we are not safe. So, you want a choice of more or less fracking, or do you want a ban? Okay, we got an election coming up. Have you talked to your state assembly representative and your state senator? Yes. Do they sponsor a ban?
No, they sponsor drilling.
Okay, you need to run against them. If you don't have a candidate in your race, you can still get on the ballot as a Green candidate for a fracking ban. The deadline is mid-July. We can help you get on the ballot. We need anti-fracking candidates who are for a ban. And you need to talk to those who are sponsors of the ban and have an accountability session and ask them, what have you done for us lately? Because a lot of people sign up and don't do anything. So if you have talked to your assembly and state senate people, or you go talk and you don't have a candidate for a ban, let's get candidates in this race. Contact us, we'll help you get on the ballot. New York can lead the whole country on this. New York can lead the whole country on this because we're the closest to a ban. We got a real movement. And as New York goes, so goes the nation. We got to lead on this and we can do it. But if we don't have a way of threatening the votes so the people are in there comfortably, they're going to take us for granted. We'd have mass demos, but if they don't have to worry about the votes, they ain't going to worry about us. So let's ban fracking. Thank you.
Thanks, Howie. That's right, and whatever, we encourage every single one of you to run for office on an anti-fracking platform. And so we have one more speaker, and then we're going to wrap it up and make our final call out to the governor and to the DEC. But before I do that, we have Matt Grayson, who is a business owner. Like I said, we have close to 1,000 businesses who are calling for a statewide ban on fracking in New York State as a part of the coalition. But Matt is also a big part of the recent Gasland Screening at the Landmark Theater with his cousin Alec Baldwin. So without further ado, we have Matt.
I'm not going to pretend to be as eloquent and knowledgeable as all the people that you heard before me, but a year ago my neighbor started to explain to me what hydrofracking was. And being a local businessman in Skinny Atlas, we make health products, raw whole superfoods, etc. Thank you. And you know, I always brag about the fact that we're connected to one of the cleanest lakes in the world, definitely in the United States, Skinny Atlas. I'm so proud of that. And he started to describe hydrofracking, and I was like, you're kidding me. You're pumping chemicals into the ground? I remember I tried to get rid of benzene one time. The dump wouldn't take it. I had to call a hazmat team. It just didn't make sense to me. To my simple brain, I just could not understand that. So I said to myself, what can I do? I'm just a simple guy. What can I do? And I said, wait a minute. I have a very powerful weapon, and its name is Alec Baldwin. So we contacted Josh Fox. We got a screening of Gasland a couple weeks ago. We were at the Landmark Theater. And what keeps just ringing in my head is that, look, people have power. There is power in numbers. And if Facebook can overthrow the oldest government in the world, Egypt, then we can stop hydrofracking.
Okay, so before we start some chanting and making some noise and getting organized, I want everyone here to make sure they sign this clipboard so you can get involved in the statewide movement to ban fracking. But we're making our final call once again. We're here to make our message loud and clear to Governor Cuomo and to the New York DEC that the only adequate regulation is a statewide ban. We will not stand for fracking and non-fracking zones in New York State. We will not stand for a sacrifice zone. We will not stand for any individual to be a guinea pig to this dangerous and devastating practice. And we need to make a call out to the DEC to protect us, to do their jobs. We need you. We need you guys more than ever right now. And you know we had 13,000 comments that still have not been finished. They've still not finished reviewing the 13,000 comments from 2009. We have over 66,000 comments on the last round of the revised draft supplemental generic environmental impact statement. What about that? Where there's no health impact assessment on fracking. There's no socioeconomic study. We've looked at the benefits to fracking in New York State, but we haven't looked at the costs to our community in New York State. What about the radioactive Marcellus Shale? What about radon? What about the wastewater? We still have no plan for how we're going to dispose of the wastewater. What about the casing failures? It doesn't matter how much you case that. What about the over 1,000 cases of contamination in the United States and the thousands more that have not been disclosed because people are signing non-disclosure agreements? We know this can't be done safely. We know that this review is not adequate. We know that we can't figure it out. There's a reason we can't figure it out, because you can't do it. And we need to now transition to a renewable energy economy. And we need the DEC to come out. We need whistleblowers. Frack Action, the organization I work for, was here looking for whistleblowers recently. And we know, in light of the recent information of all the flaws with this process, that we need someone to come out. We need people to speak up. And we need the DEC, and we also need the governor to do his job, which is to protect New Yorkers, to stand up and say that he loves New York, to show that he really wants to run for president and that he really wants to win for governor again in 2014. And that's by transitioning to a renewable energy economy and having long-lasting, sustainable jobs in New York State and not killing jobs in New York State, which is what fracking would do. So that's it for today. We're going to commence with signing the clipboard and chanting on the street and holding up our signs, and we thank everyone for coming. Yeah. Sure.